representing 25,000 members throughout the state. The meeting was inspirational, and clubs across California dedicated their efforts to the suffrage movement. These pioneering women successfully earned the right to vote for California women in October 1911. Democracy in the world where women can vote. Kansas, and Arizona gained women's suffrage.
In 1913, the 17th Amendment is ratified, taking the election of U.S. senators out of the hands of the state legislatures and giving it directly to the people. Nevada and Montana gained women's suffrage in 1914. The women in states where they have gained suffrage are now voting for the senators who represent them.
The first decade of the 20th century brings a more militant group of women to the forefront of the movement. Having been schooled by the British suffragettes, Harriet Stanton Blatch, the daughter of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, starts the Women's Political Union and organizes many suffrage parades, believing that people will be more easily drawn to music and marches in the streets rather than being in convention halls with arguments.
To support women's suffrage is Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party in 1912.
Boy!
The great spectacle of the Women's Suffrage Parade occurs on March 13th, 1913, the day before the inauguration of Woodrow Wilson. Organized by the NAWSA, thousands march down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Some controversy arises due to the last-minute segregation of African-American women to the back of the parade at the request of the Southern delegations. Ida B. Wells, part of the Illinois delegation, will have none of this. Already a powerful force in the abolitionist and suffragist movements, Ida Wells is a writer, publisher, and activist.
The people must know before they can act, and there is no educator to compare with the press.
Ida Wells wrote influential articles exposing the horrors of lynching and assisted in the establishment of the NAACP. She formed the Alpha Suffrage Club, the largest black women's suffrage club in the state of Illinois.
One had better die fighting injustice than like a dog or rat in a trap.
At the 1913 parade, Mrs. Wells refuses to walk in the back and waits on the sidelines for an opportune moment. As the delegates begin marching, she quietly steps out from the crowd of spectators and joins her Illinois colleagues.
The way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth upon them.
In 1916, Montana elects Jeannette Rankin as the first woman elected to the U.S. House of Representatives.
Thank you. You can no more win a war than you can win an earthquake. Men and women are like right and left hands. It makes no sense not to use both. We are half the people. We should be half the Congress.
The current president of the NAWSA addresses the United States Congress in 1917.
Do you realize that when you ask women to take their cause to state referendum, you compel them to do this? That you drive women of education, refinement, achievement to beg men who cannot read for their political freedom? Do you realize that such anomalies as a college president asking her janitor to give her a vote are overstraining the patience and driving women to desperation? There is one thing mightier than kings and armies, than congresses and political parties, the power of an idea when its time has come to move.
Yes!
The time for women's suffrage has come.
Yes!
The women's hour has struck.
Yes!
The idea will not perish. The party which opposes it may. Every delay, every trick, every political dishonesty from now on will antagonize the women of the land more and more. And when the party or parties which have so delayed women's suffrage finally let it come, their sincerity will be doubted, and their appeal to the new voters will be met with suspicion. This is the psychology of the situation. Can you afford the risk? Think it over.
Freeze all! Freeze all! 1916, New York State recognizes women's right to vote.
One of the new vanguard of suffragists who take their message to the streets and include women from all walks of life in the fight for the right to vote. While a graduate student in England, Alice had joined a militant English suffragette group and was arrested repeatedly and served 3 jail terms. Paul's militant methods create tension with the leaders of the NAWSA who think she's moving too aggressively. Eventually, these disagreements about strategy and tactics lead to a break with the NAWSA, and Paul forms the National Woman's Party, the NWP, in 1916.
The NWP begins introducing methods used by the movement in Britain. In June 1917, picketers the silent sentinels, who are protesting peacefully and legally in front of the White House, are arrested on charges of obstructing traffic. Convicted and incarcerated at the Occoquan workhouse in Virginia, Alice Paul goes on a hunger strike.
They tied us down with bonds around our legs, chests, and necks. Then the doctors and warders held us down and forced a tube, 5 or 6 feet long, about the size of a finger, through the nostrils to the stomach. It always caused my nose to bleed and brought out a perspiration all over me. I had fits of trembling, and I never went through the experience without weeping and sometimes crying out loud.
The cumulative effect of the years of persistent work, the state victories resulting in millions of women voters, and what picketers have endured in their imprisonment has brought the suffrage struggle to a tipping point.
So certain are they that the suffrage amendment will finally pass, Carrie Chapman Catt outlines a plan for an auxiliary organization to the NAWSA. As each state gains the right to vote, it automatically becomes a member, and ultimately there will be a central body of all the states once national suffrage is achieved. This new organization will be known as the National League of Women Voters.
Although President Wilson has publicly promised to support the suffrage amendment, he fails to show his support, adopting a hands-off policy rather than stand up to the racist members of his party in the South.
Resolve!
Resolve! 1918 sees Michigan, South Dakota, and Oklahoma gain women's suffrage.
The suffragists continue to keep the watchfire burning near the White House. Each time President Wilson makes a stirring pro-democracy speech, the members toll a large and loud bell, and one of them goes outside their headquarters in Lafayette Park carrying a copy of the speech, and with great dignity, burns it in their cauldron. When Wilson still has not delivered on his promise to get his party on board with the suffrage movement, 100 women gather in front of the White House on February 9th, 1919, and burn the president's image in effigy. 39 of them are arrested and 25 are sent to jail.
In January 1919, Congress ratifies the 18th Amendment, banning the sale, transportation, and use of alcohol in the United States. While it seems unbelievable that the temperance movement wins support before women's suffrage, it also strengthens the federal government's authority over the states. This weakening of the states' rights argument against suffrage strengthens the prospects for passage, which quickly happens less than 6 months later.
On June 4th, 1919, Congress passes the 19th Amendment for federal women's suffrage. The amendment is worded exactly the same as the one introduced in Congress in 1878 and will become to be known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment.
Resolved! Resolved! Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex.
It is now on to the states for ratification. By March 1920, 35 states have ratified the amendment, leaving only one more state needed to meet the 3/4 requirement. Of the 12 unratified states, the suffragettes, led by Carrie Chapman Catt, decided to go south to concentrate on Tennessee.
I never saw so vicious a lobby as that opposed to us. And as for myself, sometimes I was terrified by the terrible hostility. No group of women ever worked harder than did the Tennessee women. They started in full vigor, and I saw them grow pale and weak and fairly prostrated before they were through. They feared nothing. They left no stone unturned. They were resourceful beyond anything I have ever known.
Though the governor of Tennessee supported ratification, most lawmakers were still undecided. Anti-suffragists targeted members meeting their trains as they arrived in Nashville to make their case. When the General Assembly of the Tennessee Senate and House of Representatives convenes on August 9th, both supporters and opponents set up stations outside of chambers, handing out yellow roses to the suffrage supporters and red to the antis.
On August 12th, the state Senate votes in favor of ratification. As the House prepares to take up the issue on August 18th, lobbying intensifies. An attempt to table the ratification resolution is defeated twice, with a vote of 48-48. Representative Harry T. Byrne has voted to table the resolution both times. The young congressman had intended to vote for the amendment, but after being pressured by party leaders and receiving misleading telegrams from his constituents telling him his district is overwhelmingly opposed to women's suffrage, he begins to side with the anti-suffragettes. However, he holds a letter in his coat pocket from his mother, Beth Enslinger Byrne of Nyota, Tennessee, asking him to vote in favor of the amendment.
My dear son, hurrah and vote for suffrage, and don't keep them in doubt. I noticed Chandler's speech. It was very bitter. I've been watching to see how you stood, but I haven't seen anything yet. Don't forget to be a good boy and help Mrs. Catt with her rats. Is she the one who put rat in ratification? How? Well, no more from me at this time. With lots of love, Mama.
When the vote was held again, Byrne votes yes. The House Speaker then files a motion to reconsider. When it becomes clear that he does not have enough votes to carry the motion, 37 legislators opposing suffrage board a train, fleeing Nashville for Decatur, Alabama, to block the House from taking action by preventing a quorum. The ploy fails, and on August 18, 1920, Tennessee narrowly approves the 19th Amendment. Recognizing the right of women to vote is signed into the law by Woodrow Wilson on August 26, 1920.
Good news, ladies. Good news, ladies. Good news, ladies. We won the right to vote. Sweet dreams, ladies. Sweet dreams, ladies. Sweet dreams, ladies. We'll save the country now. Gladly we will cast our vote. Cast our vote. Cast our vote. Gladly we will cast our vote on election day. Come vote, ladies. Come vote, ladies. Come vote, ladies. The civic hall obey.
The 19th Amendment does not constitute an end, a final victory. The exclusive club of U.S. citizenship keeps being forced to expand its membership by those democracy-loving citizens who believe that people should mean everyone.
Chinese Americans aren't allowed in the club as United States citizens until 1943. In 1946, Filipinos were allowed in. Japanese and other Asian Americans in 1952.
In 1965, the Voting Rights Act makes a valiant attempt to abolish the Jim Crow laws that keep African Americans from voting.
The money requirement for voting is removed in 1966 when poll taxes are declared illegal. People with physical challenges gain access to the polls in 1990 with passage of the American with Disabilities Act.
We, the people, determine history by our choices. One person's boldness can fire up others.
2 means someone has that person's back.
A dozen can start a movement.
100 can swing an election.
1,000 can change the course of history.
The Founding Fathers set forth an idea that was larger than themselves. Their words for justice and equality. Their practice was not. Their words in the first sentence of the Constitution give us a challenge to establish justice, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. It is up to us to continue to make manifest that challenge. Please join us in singing, Will the Circle Be Unbroken?